Watching Beyond Market, welcome. I'm Esther Awoniyi. Many thanks for joining us. On today's show, we'll discuss the planned recapitalization of Nigeria's Bank of Agriculture. You can join today's conversation with the hashtag Beyond Market, and you can follow my Twitter handle too at Esther Awoniyi. Now, the Nigerian government says it has initiated a restructuring and recapitalizing process for the Bank of Agriculture in order to strengthen Nigeria's agriculture sector. Emmanuel Ijiwere, Chairman, Best Food Farms, joins me for this discussion. Emmanuel, thank you for your time on the show today.
Thank you.
So the Bank of Agriculture was set up in 1972, to provide small credit to farmers, and
Yes.
several, decades later, it would appear that it has failed to live up to that, to that mandate. Let's start from there, why it was set up and what you think over the years went wrong.
At the time it was set up in 1972, the thinking of government was that government was at the height, the pinnacle of business in Nigeria. And therefore, let us just help these people. It was seen more by the people as a largesse from government. And this psychology that was put in the minds of people, because it was money coming from government, there was no seriousness about it being seen as a business money. It was money that was being distributed as part of the oil money. It became worse when politicians took over from the military. The politicians intervened so much. They ran the banks. The bank was under the ministry. And therefore, the people that were in charge of managing the banks were not selected because of their professional competence, but because of the strategic positions they held within their political arena. So whatever is lost was planned to be lost from the beginning. Because when you say the small farmer is one of the most honest people we have in this country. And if you read the report of First Bank over the years, they have consistently said that the best performing sector in terms of loan repayment for them is the agricultural sector. So how come Bank of Agriculture is saying this and First Bank is saying the other? Because First Bank, when they give loan to people, people's thinking is that this is business money that must be paid back. In Bank of Agriculture in the past, this is government money, my share of it.
Not a loan, because it's still a loan at the end of the day that needs to be repaid. So are you saying that during the typical transaction at the Bank of Agriculture, the farmer doesn't know that he has to pay that money back, even though it's on some paper that this is a loan given to you and perhaps a concessionary rate, which I understand has always been single digit.
But let us also understand, who are the people? Publish these names. I assure you, 80% of them will be politically related people. It's not for farming. You remember until about 5 or 6 years ago, agriculture was not seen as a business. It was seen more like a government project. It's now recently that we are beginning to come up with this whole thing. So all those backlog of things were the psyche of people, the psyche of politicians, the psyche of those various local government people, that this was their share of the money. So in actual fact, we don't talk about, really, no serious organization could have expected the repayment of those loans if they were given to politicians who left office.
Now, because what we've heard in terms of some of the reasons why the bank went or has not been as effective as it should be is inadequate funding, poor risk management, and debt, outstanding debt. We hear the amount is as high as 60 billion. So someone who's looking on the outside could say, okay, well, if they have a huge bill of non-performing loans, that's enough to cripple any financial institution.
Yes, but you look at the facts behind the figures. If you look at the facts behind the figures, why was the bank set up? How did the bank operate? What was the policy of the bank? Who were the people running the bank? What was the professionalism of the bank? Bring all those to the table. You will discover that the bank was designed to fail if it's going to be considered as a bank. But as a distribution network, it was a very good distribution network of country's wealth.
Okay, so fast forward to, to today now.
Yes.
The Minister of Agriculture has said, through the government has said, okay, now we want to give this bank a new face. We want to restructure, we want to recapitalize, and we want the farmers to play a significant role, to be major shareholders, as it were, in this bank. And we understand that the process has already started and will take a span over 90 days.
Yes.
What are your thoughts when you heard this news from the Minister of Agriculture? What came to mind for you?
I was happy about it. It reinforced what they have already started doing. The first thing they did, which was the right thing to do, was to put in place professionals. They have completely reorganized the management of the bank. Virtually all those that run the bank, from the managing director, all the executive directors, and the top executives are all from the private sector. So there's a private sector mentality that's been brought in. So it's a new ball game we're talking about. It's not like what used to happen. So we've talked about history. Now we're going to talk about the reality of today. I think there's no better time than now. And I'm glad that this minister has now set a 90-day period within which to be done. Because the longer it takes, the more we just lose interest in it. What government has done here is a very good one. However, I don't think it's in the interest of going forward for the government to hold 40% of the shares. It should be run like a private company. The moment people continue to believe that government owns a substantial part of it, that's bad psychology comes back into it. There's enough funding in the country today. If you look at all the various levies and so on in the central bank, it's about 1 trillion naira that the central bank is holding, doing nothing. You have the sugar, you have the cocoa, all those things that monies were collected as levies that have been kept in the bank. These are monies that could have been used, but it should not be used the same way it was used in the past. You're putting a good management there, let it be run like a private sector company. No farmer that I know that's a genuine farmer would not wish to pay back his loan. All he's looking for is, understand my problem, let's work together. Because every farmer that I know is a hard-working person and an honest and trustworthy person. So I believe that it's not just farming. Again, the mentality that will now go into it, because in the past, the philosophy of government has been supply, supply, supply. Now, it should be demand. That means that you don't even plant anything unless you have an off-taker. So there will be a tripartite arrangement. The off-taker, the bank, and the farmer. The three of them must work together as a team. That's the kind of future we're looking for, and that is called agribusiness. Not necessarily farming, but also along the entire value chain.
Now, because the minister also says, I mean, along the way, they're hoping that private investments will come in. But you're saying that, I mean, because government, even though it's a minority share that they're holding on to, because they're there in the first place, that might be some kind of discouragement. But do you think that it could be a big problem in terms of discouraging? Because definitely investments are desperately needed here.
My worry here, why I brought in the issue that the government should further whittle down its own share from 40%, is because, I mean, this minister is there now, this government is there today, but let another one come. Politicians who will say that we own 40% of the bank, they will want to influence as the biggest single shareholders. But I will want a situation where the government does not have more than 10%. In doing that, governments can have a bit of indirect control of the place through debenture holdings or whatever, all kinds of ways of being there, but government must not run it as a government agency. It must never be thought as a government agency. It must be seen as a private sector thing, run by private sector. Every farmer is a private sector player. That is what we need to understand. Every farmer, however small he is a private sector player. So let them run this whole thing. Let them own it. They may not have the muscle to do it. Government support them to have that muscle. Sometime in the future, they'll be able to take over this and run it. But government should not give that impression that it is our own and politicians now will overrun it.
Now, for the new bank that's going to emerge, apart from money, apart from loans, what other benefits, I mean, to farmers can this bank, or what a role would this bank play to farmers?
Well, the training. One of the issues is this, that there are too many farmers all scattered all over the place. They need to bring them up together as cooperatives, clusters. There should be a system in place to assist them. The cost of doing this is high. So for you to be able to have a viable cooperative organization, you need to have a cooperative officer who is trained and educated in this to put it together. What I see is that the first 6 months, the Bank of Agriculture or whoever the government agency is, or the local government or the state government, should provide these people for them for 6 months so that they pay those people's salary while the cooperatives get matured. In 6 months' time, they start paying these people's salaries. You now start having a situation where these clusters are now taking on a life of their own going forward. There are 774 local governments in Nigeria. If you start off by saying that each local government should have at least 5 to 10 cooperatives moving up to 2030 in future. Start with that. That's where you start from. And then people are now, when they're in cooperatives, they have mutual respect. They have determination to succeed. There's competition going on. And they're identifiable. And the moral suasion that exists within a cooperative does not exist when an individual is involved with the bank officials. That's the kind of thing we think should be done. And I think they need to bring that funding into place to bring this up, lay that foundation, and then we can now start moving forward. What the thinking of government is a very good one, but they need to tinkle with it in this whole manner.
Now you mentioned training, and my mind goes to some of the comments that the minister made, saying that what he sees today still among farmers is that many of them do not practice good agronomic practices. I mean, soil, how to treat the soil, how to plant. He made give some examples of just how the typical farmer in Nigeria plants corn versus another farmer in the Western world. That there's still that stark difference. How do we begin to bridge those gaps? Because it's not enough to give these farmers money. They need to take it back and, of course, be very productive with it.
The best way to disseminate knowledge is in groups. Rather than going to individual farmer to talk to them, bring them together as a group. Usually, those cooperatives are product-based. They are usually the Tomato Farmers Association, the Maize Farmers Association. You now bring people to lecture them as a group, teach them together. Let's give you the tomato industry, for example. Whatever the tomato man really wants, he cannot achieve his goal because only 1% of all tomato farmers in Nigeria use improved seedling. And the difference between improved seedling and the ones they use right now is about 350%. So if you have a situation where you are able to now say, farmer as a cooperative will give you this seedling as a loan, not money, as a loan. When you now harvest, you pay us back. The farmer will be very happy to do that. He will rather use that and use the poor seed that he used last year, this year again. That's the kind of thing that we are asking for. So what we're saying is that there should be an interface, a training situation. Nigeria has moved very, very much in the past since 1990-something when we started this GSM. Every village has. My grandmother had. She knew, well, she's passed now, but it was exciting that she could call and disturb you at midnight. Right now, we can use that to help these people. You can send them text messages in their own languages. And if you have these trained people who can interpret figures that are sent to them by SMS, he can talk to them and can tell you what prices these things are going for at this time. This is the best time to plant. Rain is likely to come at this time. You're going to have flooding at about this time. That kind of information can come electronically to these people. That's how but bringing them together will be a lot easier as cooperatives.
Emmanuel, well, thank you for your time. So if I will take a short break here and come back and pick up from where we left off. I've been speaking to Emmanuel Ijiwere, is the chairman of Best Food Farms. If you're just joining us, Emmanuel Ijiwere, chairman of Best Food Farms, is with me today, and we're discussing the planned recapitalization of Nigeria's Bank of Agriculture. Emmanuel, thank you for your time so far.
Thank you.
Let's get back to those loans again. We talked about, well, I guess it's already a given that there will be single-digit loans.
Yes.
Okay, so that on the one hand, and also I would like to ask you the size of these loans. I mean, when we talk about it, nothing is on paper yet, nothing has been announced yet, but I'm just thinking, what are your expectations in terms of the size of these loans?
First and foremost, we should try to avoid a situation where the loan is seen only in cash terms. It should be seen in terms of input. An example, once you are able to tell the farmers, before they can come to you, they must come as a cooperative. And they will have put their organizations together. They will have assessed what kind of soil test will have been done for them as a group. And you would have been able to identify what kind of seeds are best for them. The loan will be an arrangement between the seed company, who will be committed to giving them the seed that is appropriate for that soil. And the money will be paid direct to that seed company for distribution to all these farmers and their various accounts. Remember that each of these farmers, these cooperatives, although they will open an account as a cooperative, but the individuals themselves must open individual accounts. In other words, when the bank provides the money is or rather for the seeds, that money is distributed to the various accounts, debited to the various accounts of those various farmers. They know they are starting off from a debit situation because the seeds have been paid for. Now, over the period, they will also have a number of other inputs. They do that as a group. Then, at the end of the day, remember I mentioned the issue of the off-taker. The off-taker comes in and buys them all. Rather than the farmer worrying about transportation, storage, and so on, the off-taker must have the ability to come in there and carry the goods as and when they are ready for harvesting, reducing the post-harvest losses we suffer in this country. And at that time, he pays directly to the bank. And this is now redistributed depending on the quantity that was collected from each farm. That is how this is done.
I mean, this obviously sounds like an ideal situation, an ideal arrangement and transaction, yes. But would it always be this organized?
It is possible to organize it. We tried in Gombe and 2 other states, and it worked very well. It's not very difficult. Today of electronic days, it's so easy to get this kind of thing done.
Getting them into cooperatives, getting the seed, like seed providers,
yes.
And third party.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And with that kind of situation, seriousness comes into it. Remember, I said you don't just give them seed for the sake of seed. They would have, as a collective, with this manager that they have put together there, they will be able to identify what soil test has taken place, what's the result of the soil test, what's the best seed, what are the kind of inputs you have in there. We have a lot of chemicals that farmers are buying regardless of the damage they do to the soil. So these are better ways of doing it, bringing people together. But the key to it is to also have these cooperatives under the control or under the advice of a trained person. We have about 4 cooperative schools in Nigeria. Strengthen those schools, train more people. All our existing universities too could have departments for training these people. In other words, if you can have a lot of graduates that can go for this training, 3 to 6 months training on cooperative activities, will do a lot of good for Nigeria.
Because I was going to actually also ask you to break down these cooperatives, because some might listen to it excuse me, and think to themselves, when they hear cooperatives, their minds go to rural, farmers, smallholder farmers who are not, savvy when it comes to tech and etc. So I used to, when you say cooperatives, so and any type of farmer, even today's farmer, the most sophisticated farmer can and should be part of this cooperative.
Yes, and we should not also restrict it to just farmers. Those, in fact, even the transporters. The transporters should realize that the way of transporting today is not the way it should be. Even the way they package the goods, but they must come together as an association. For example, the crates for carrying produce. The farmer does not need to own it, or rather, one transporter does not need to own it. There will be, as a cooperative, they will have an investment. A bank will invest in those crates, and this person will be hiring those crates out to these farmers to use and return. Just like these soft drink companies. When you go to buy soft drink, you in fact lease the crates. When you take it back, you collect back your money. That's exactly the kind of thing we're trying to bring up here. So all these are practical approaches. That's why I said government should not sit down in its air-conditioned offices and come up with the ideas and impose it on people. You must not shave the agricultural players. Cannot shave their heads behind their back. They must be involved in all of this. All these things that are coming out, we believe there should be better consultation. And the banks have had a lot of experience. Yet they have not been very good to farmers, or to the agricultural industry.
No, because it's still viewed as a high-risk sector.
Yes, that's the part of the problem. Now, there is another issue that's happened here. There's about 5% that is collected from banks regularly, and that money is in the central bank. Who has control of that money? The bank is still their money, but it was brought together to help the agricultural industry. Who are those that are taking decisions on how the money should be deployed? That is the issue. You've got to bring, everybody must come around the table to talk to each other and know what everybody is doing. Not pontificate on what needs to be done, everybody obeys it. I think that's not good for business, and that's what we have done in the past that need to change.
Now, the government also said, because the vision for this bank, according to the minister, is to make it, if possible, that's what they would like to see, the biggest bank, in the country, like we see in countries like China and the Netherlands. And I'm thinking, obviously, we need to scale, and it's obviously, because we're doing this, not not differently for the first time compared to past decades. So it's going to be a learning curve for the government. But those steps that need to be taken to help this bank scale, to ensure that those investments come in and to ensure that government, because government is not good when it comes, I mean, business of running a business is not usually not good for the government, but that's what we've seen in the past. But in terms of scaling, are you hopeful that we can scale? And
now,
I know some of the suggestions and recommendations you've made are quite good, but in reality, many of them may not be taken as steps, by the government, like maybe the cooperatives that you've mentioned, in order to help, scale things.
We have already scaled. First, the bankers committee in Nigeria is a very, 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 very strong organization. So Central Bank works with them as one team. They are prepared to put all their heads together with all the resources, the intellectual resources they have to make this thing work. Bring them on board, not as individual banks, but as a bankers committee. That's an asset this country has, needs to work with the bankers committee. You have some of the best brains in the banks. Bring them to the table. They will make sure this works because in the individual banks, they've acquired a lot of experience on how to deal with the agricultural sector. Bring them to the table. What I'm actually saying is this. The Minister of Agric have been doing a fantastic job, at least for the past 5-10 years. But they are not doers. The doers are those farmers, those people who are transporting the goods, those people who are selling the goods, those who are storing the goods, the bankers that are funding them. Those are the doers. But if the doers are not brought to the table to discuss, you are shaving the head you are shaving somebody's head behind his back. That's basically what it is. What I'm saying is this: government needs to bring them on board. No fear as to whether we'll be as big as Rabobank of the Netherlands. No, we already have that on the ground. The bankers committee is a very viable and strong, very well an articulate organization that government can use. It's an asset to us.
I want to go back to the size of the loans. I know you also said that we should look at it from a point of view, not just the money, but inputs also being put on the table.
Yes.
But my mind goes to these monies that they're going to be giving out. Are they to what extent are they hoping that these will benefit the farmers? Is it to double their production or yield output? Is it to help them? Some of them go into more into mechanized farming. I know that has been a big problem in terms of mechanized farming here in the country. But just in terms of the benefits and the impact that we're going to see, is that where we're going? Is that the thinking here?
As of today, the yield for produce in Nigeria is one of the lowest in the world. It's because of ignorance and poverty. A farmer will want to have about 35 to 40 metric tons per hectare, but he cannot because he cannot afford the high yielding seed. So he now uses what he used last year. He will end up with about 3 or 4 metric tons per hectare. That if you are able to help him to get to that level, you are now reducing his level of poverty. You're opening his eyes to more things. Nigeria is producing more food. Let's understand one thing. Nigeria's population growth is going about 3.4% per annum. Our food increase, the produce is going up by only 2.5% per annum. In other words, unless we reverse that as quickly as possible, we'll get to a situation where the price of food will be untouchable. So let's go back. Then I quickly want to bring in the issue of mechanized farming. The price of machines is very, very high because they're in foreign exchange. So the last government and this government have done a fantastic job of creating a body called TOFAN, about 2 or 3 of them. They own this equipment, buy these equipments, and banks are funding them to own those equipments. You don't need a tractor. You don't need to own a tractor on your farm. You only use a tractor for about 2 or 3 weeks in a whole year. And it sits there, and you spend about 8 or 9 million on it. Whereas for the 1 or 2 or 3 weeks you're using this, you pay pittance, a little amount of money. And those people bringing the tractor own it, they can operate it, and they are good at it. You pay to them. So we have more and more of these. So we are discouraging farmers as much as possible from owning tractors. It does not pay them. It does not make economic sense to do so. These are the things we need to educate people on. What happened in the past was that it was prestige. You will remember that those were formerly palm secs and generals who came, who had plenty of money with them so they can afford to buy tractors that they really didn't need. Whereas today, it should be owned and hired out and leased out. It's the same mentality of individuals owning private jets when you can always hire a jet when you need one. That is the situation, because every farmer is discouraged if you can help. Every farmer is discouraged from owning it if you can lease it, because of the cost of maintaining. So it's not profitable to do so. Now, going back to this one about the various farmers, how does it help them? When you start reducing their poverty, it attracts more people. Better educated people start coming into it. Their own children start coming into that industry. You are improving the quality of the people and ability to move into the modern age. As of today, we are trying very hard to tell the people that poverty and famine are no longer twin brothers, but there are people that are not believing yet. Let's now start improving the lives of these farmers, and their own children will start seeing what is happening. They will start coming forward.
I'm speaking to Emmanuel Ijiwere, is the chairman, Best Food Farms. So that's it on Beyond Markets. Thank you so much for being a part of it. Remember, you can watch the show at 5 p.m. West African time daily and have access to all previous episodes of Beyond Markets on our website at cnbcafrica.com. I'm Esther Awoniyi. Bye for now.